I ask you to step aside and remove the blockade, or you'll be arrested for contempt of court.
Tonight, both the RCMP and protesters say the blockades to stop old-growth logging in BC are getting too dangerous.
And that's the sad part, like, to be eliminated just because you're not married.
And 2 women are fighting in Alberta First Nation for not letting them run for chief or vote because they are living common law. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Arrests continue on Vancouver Island in the dispute over old growth forests near Fairy Creek. Both RCMP and protesters expressed concerns with the tactics on the logging roads. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
I ask you to step aside and remove the blockade, or you'll be arrested for contempt of court. I'm not stepping aside.
An RCMP officer reads orders to a large group of protesters at a camp on a logging road on southern Vancouver Island. Then arrests start of the protesters who have linked arms on the road. Groups have set up blockades for over a year around Fairy Creek to protect old-growth forests. RCMP started enforcing an injunction which allows Teal Jones to operate since mid-May. Earlier this month, a social media post shows a protester falling from a tripod structure with an RCMP officer at the base. An environmental group behind the protest, the Rainforest Flying Squad, has expressed concern that someone may get hurt as the arrests increase.
A crisis of policing. This has become an incredibly dangerous scenario simply because of the actions of the RCMP, the recklessness of their decision making, and the lack of consideration that they carry for human safety and human life.
In June, Teal Jones agreed to 2-year deferrals on old-growth logging on Fairy Creek and Carmana-Walbrand areas. But the blockades remained, calling for permanent protection of the areas, and some protesters are calling for permanent protection of all old-growth forests in BC. This week in a press release, RCMP state there have been nearly 700 arrests in the Fairy Creek area. In an email statement to APTN, an RCMP spokesperson says the protesters creating the risk. There are no official complaints or reports of injuries since enforcement began. In recent days, protesters have increased their tactics to even more dangerous levels, such as digging deep trenches and erecting extremely complicated and unsafe tripods. We would caution anyone viewing these videos and reading comments to keep in mind that they do not capture the events and lengthy efforts leading up to or following the arrests or attempts of arrests of individuals. The battle over Fairy Creek has lasted over a year. Many returned to the injunction zone after being arrested. RCMP say 133 arrests were repeat arrests. Police continue enforcing the BC Supreme Court injunction, clearing the road for Teal Jones to operate. There is concern that on the ground, if things continue this way, there is a risk of someone losing their life.
We're now having internal conversations about what happens if somebody's life is seriously put in danger by actions of the police, or if there's the potential for life loss. And I think having those conversations within a peaceful, non-violent community, simply blockading a road to try and protect forests, speaks volumes about the aggression of the RCMP and the need for the media and everyone in this country to really ask if this is the country that they want to live in.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was on the campaign trail in Saskatchewan today. One of his stops was on the Cowessess First Nation. Singh toured the residential school gravesite where 751 graves were found with ground-penetrating radar in June. He said it was important to bring national attention to the gravesite and make sure Canadians don't forget. The NDP election platform calls for the better treatment of all Indigenous peoples.
So of course it hit differently. It hit differently being a parent, for sure. I will fight for justice for Indigenous people because it is the simple, basic requirement of decency that in a country where the first people of this land continue to be treated as less than human, as less worthy, we have to put an end to that. And I demand that, and I will continue to fight for that.
The Piikani Nation in southern Alberta has announced they will be searching for unmarked graves on their land. In a news release, the nation said there were 4 residential schools on their territory, but say additional grave sites could be found as well. Ground-penetrating radar equipment is being provided by SNC-Lavalin. The search will take place in the coming weeks. Manitoba RCMP have issued a warrant for 36-year-old Cody Monius. He's wanted in connection to an aggravated sexual assault on the Norway House First Nation. According to police, a woman fled a house in the early hours of August 11th with multiple serious injuries, screaming for help. She told police she was held against her will and repeatedly assaulted. Over a dozen people were arrested in connection to the incident and face multiple charges. Police say the woman was transferred to a Winnipeg hospital in stable condition and is receiving further treatment. RCMP are asking anyone who may have information on Monius to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. And turning to our COVID-19 coverage today, some experts and parents are raising their concerns about the Delta variant and how Canada's 4th wave could impact the return to school. Health experts say creating a safe indoor environment is key to students' return to the classroom. This includes face masks, physical distancing, small cohort sizes, and increased ventilation, which many provinces have already implemented. Vaccines are also a factor. The more children 12 and up that are vaccinated means everyone is more protected. The idea of a vaccine passport for accessing certain non-essential services is gaining traction across Canada. According to a new Ledger poll, more than 75% of people say they would support a system similar to one being launched in Quebec. The survey also suggests that people are becoming less optimistic about the direction the pandemic is taking as cases of the Delta variant surge. Canada's top doctor has warned the newest wave is well underway, with nearly 21,000 active cases as of Thursday, more than double what they were 2 weeks ago. COVID-19 cases in the Northwest Territories have grown exponentially in the past week, reaching a total of 170 active cases. A majority of the cases are in the Sawtooth region, with 78 reported in Good Fort Hope and 55 in Colville Lake. Both communities are under 10-day lockdowns to try to help stop the spread of the virus. The territory had not seen cases of COVID-19 since an outbreak at a Yellowknife school in June. And if you were planning on heading to the United States, well, you're out of luck. The United States has extended its border restrictions with Canada for another 30 days. The current restrictions are set to expire tomorrow, but the U.S. is currently dealing with spiking COVID-19 cases due to the Delta variant. The U.S. border has been closed to non-essential travel since March of 2020. Canada opened its border to fully vaccinated Americans on August 9th. And to BC now, where there is some progress in the battle against hundreds of devastating wildfires in the province. An evacuation alert has now been lifted for properties east of Kamloops and the city of Armstrong, and while that is welcome news, the battle against the blaze is far from over. There are more than 290 wildfires still burning in the province. More than 8,500 square kilometers of land has been lost since the fire season began in April. More than 3,000 firefighters are working to put out the flames. They are being helped by cooler conditions and some recent rain. However, fire crews are facing issues with fatigue, with a month left in the fire season still left to go. All right, we need to step aside for a short break, but still ahead. 2 members of the Whitefish Lake First Nation in Alberta are taking their band to court for what they say is discrimination against them regarding the community's election.
You know, we shouldn't be judged or, divided because we have a different status than another.
Welcome back. 2 members of the Whitefish Lake First Nation in Alberta are taking their band to court. They say they were discriminated against by not allowing them to run for chief and council and for not being allowed to vote. APTN's Chris Stewart has the story.
Oh, I think that's the one she wanted.
Lorna Jackson Littlewolf and her partner, Leon Cardinal, have been together for 8 years. Lorna put her name in for chief and council elections this past spring, but was told by the chair of the elections committee that she was ineligible as she was living common law with Leon. Whitefish is using an election code from 1960 that hasn't been updated. That code says that no common law members can run for leadership.
And that's the sad part, like, to be eliminated just because you're not married. Like, you could run if you're single. You could apparently run if you're separated, divorced, but you can't run because you're common law. I don't get it. You know, even that's, I personally found that offensive, like, you know, because I do know we have leaders that were separated or divorced and they were eligible to run. But me living in a common law relationship or any other previous candidate were unable to run.
Jackson Littlewolf says the law is discriminatory and it blocks hundreds of potential band members from running for chief or council. A 2016 census shows there are more common law people than married people. 170 married people and 215 are listed as common law in Whitefish. Jackson Littlewolf has filed for a federal judicial review, asking for the outdated election laws to be updated and a new election held. A judicial review is heard from a judge from a complainant. The judge decides if a government is following the law, and their decision is binding. Marty Moore represents Jackson Littlewolf. Whitefish Lake First Nation is part of the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. Moore says that Whitefish is required to use the updated election laws from Saddle Lake in 2017 that allows for common law members to run for office.
So in Saddle Lake, a court case went through the federal court system, and a federal court judge ruled that the entirety of that old election code was not sufficient for various reasons to run an election these days. And the judge specifically commented that the provision that prohibits common law marriage and individuals in those relationships from running for election is likely unconstitutional.
A judicial review could be heard before the new year.
The Whitefish Lake First Nation has indicated that it intends to assert an Aboriginal right to prevent a court from addressing this discriminatory provision against individual members of Whitefish Lake First Nation who are in common law relationships. But what the details of its argument that it has an Aboriginal right to engage in this kind of conduct will be have yet to be spelled out.
You know, we shouldn't be judged or, you know, divided because we have a different status than another.
Karen McCarthy has also filed for a judicial review. She says members who were part of Bill C-31 do not have the right to vote. Bill C-31 took away status if a female married a man without status. As a child of a BC-31 mother, Karen was also not considered to have status. In 1985, Canada amended the Indian Act and over 100,000 people regained their status, including Karen McCarthy. Whitefish First Nation, however, kept excluding members from voting who were once a part of BC-31. She says leadership wants to keep the voter list small to stay in power.
For me, it's just not fair because I know I should be able to vote. If we were to have a referendum, we would all be allowed to vote. That's just the way the referendum laws are set up. So how come I can't vote in the election? How come all these other people, these young people who are 18, 19, 20 can't vote? Because it's a corrupt system that we have right now. And there's people in there that do not want to give up that stronghold that they have on the leadership positions.
Rob Louie is the CEO of the Band Members Alliance and Advocacy Association of Canada. He is helping McCarthy with her motion for a federal judicial review. He says former Bill C-31 members have been discriminated against.
But because they have that that stigma or that stereotype, that discrimination has been taking place for decades. Now that the election is over, we are challenging the outcome of it based on that discriminatory practice of denying those band members that are considered Bill C-31. Karen falls under that label.
It's pretty simple. My judicial review is I've appealed the voters list and my right to vote. And I've asked them to overturn that because I'm a full band member according to the membership that we fall under, which is Section 11. And I've asked for a re-election because I don't feel that the election that occurred in April 29th and May 6th is a valid election. And I've also filed a complaint to the RCMP on election fraud because manipulation of the voters list and specifically excluding a class of people is disenfranchisement.
McCarthy says she has now been given an eviction notice. She says it is in retaliation for her lawsuit. She says she has no plans to leave unless given a court order. APTN spoke briefly with Whitefish First Nation Chief Stan Houle about the two court cases. He referred APTN to their lawyers. The Office of Bailey and Wadden have not responded to APTN's phone messages or emails. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Whitefish Lake, First Nation.
We want to hear what you think about the situation in Whitefish Lake. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. We need to step aside for one final break. A memorandum of understanding was signed in Saskatchewan, and it will ensure science, technology, engineering, and math kits are available to all First Nation students. That story is still ahead. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Thanks to Tess Potts for sending us this amazing photo of the sunset on August 18th as seen from the Piikani Nation located in southern Alberta. Send your pictures to share@aptn.ca and don't forget to include your name and a caption for the chance to be featured on APTN National News as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting in the east, 24 in Charlottetown and 25 and cloudy in Halifax. 19 degrees in a mix of sun and cloud in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and 11 in rain in Cartwright. 32 in a mix of sun and cloud in Val-d'Or and 28 in Saguenay. 30 in a mix of sun and cloud in Toronto and 31 in London. 32 in sun in Timmins and 25 in rain in Thunder Bay. Rain and 12 in Thompson and rain and 14 in Norway House. Rain in Winnipeg and 20 degrees and 19 and rain in Dauphin. A mix of sun and cloud and 20 degrees in Swift Current and more rain and 19 in Yorkton. 11 in rain in Stony Rapids and 17 in a mix of sun and cloud in Buffalo Narrows. In the west, 19 in a mix of sun and cloud in Fort McMurray and 20 in rain in Peace River. A mix of sun and cloud and 21 in Red Deer and 21 in Medicine Hat. 22 degrees and smoky in Vancouver and 22 in rain in Campbell River. 12 degrees and raining in Dease Lake and rain and 15 in Fort Nelson. 15 in a mix of sun and cloud in Old Crow and 13 in rain in Dawson. 15 in sunshine in Yellowknife and 16 in a mix of sun and cloud in Fort Simpson. 13 degrees and smoky in Colville Lake and 16 and rain in Fort McPherson. 12 degrees in Baker Lake and 7 degrees in sun in Cambridge Bay. 0 degrees in Resolute and 9 in sunshine in Clyde River. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations and the Saskatchewan Industry Education Council signed a 5-year memorandum of understanding this week to ensure science, technology, engineering, and math kits are available to all First Nation students in the province. The MOU will ensure that robotic and encoding kits are readily available to all teachers on First Nations in Saskatchewan. The kits help teachers easily introduce robotics and encoding to students, and they make technology fun.
So SaskCode provides coding robotic kits, as you said, to professional learning to Saskatchewan teachers to support the integration of computational thinking and coding in K-12 classrooms. Our program model includes virtual and in-person professional learning that is accessible to all K-12 Saskatchewan teachers. And again, robotic kits are then loaned out to classrooms, which includes hands-on activities.
Tropical storm Grace has plowed through Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and weakened to a tropical storm. However, Grace isn't done yet. The storm has regained strength as it approaches the Gulf of Mexico. Slammed Mexico's coast just south of the ancient Mayan temples of Tulum. Heavy rain and winds as strong as 130 kilometers an hour threatened to destroy homes. Hundreds of people were evacuated from the area. Grace is expected to make a second landfall this evening or Saturday morning west of the Yucatan Peninsula. A new hurricane warning has been issued for the region. Keepers at an Australian zoo have their hands full after it welcomed its newest bundles of joy. Twin Tasmanian devil joeys were born at the conservation organization Aussie Ark and are now being hand-raised at the Australian Reptile Park in New South Wales. Both organizations are now calling on members of the public to help name the pair. I don't think I've ever seen a Tasmanian devil joey before, but now I want to see plenty more of them. Those little guys are so cute. That's all we have tonight on APTN National News. For news anytime, you can visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us and have a great night and weekend.